Have you ever questioned why some narcissists seem deeply afraid of you while others treat you like an easy target? There is a powerful psychological reason for this, one that Carl Jung recorded in his personal notes but rarely revealed openly. According to Jung's hidden classification system, there are 5 specific kinds of empaths, and each one carries a unique psychological structure that makes certain narcissistic strategies completely useless against them. What most people never understand is that you are not simply an empath. You are a particular empath archetype with its own built-in defenses that, when fully awakened, make you practically unreachable to certain manipulators. I've spent years exploring these concealed categories, and what I've learned is that most empaths never step into their real strength because they don't know which type they truly are. Today, I'm going to uncover Jung's full empath system, including the psychological triggers that unlock each type's strongest defenses. If you've ever felt weak against manipulation or wondered why you can sense things other people overlook, what you discover in the next few minutes may completely change the way you see yourself and the way you handle your relationships. This isn't hypothetical theory. This is direct applied psychological understanding that is already transforming lives. Before we move into these 5 powerful empath types, take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button. Our community grows every single day with people just like you who are waking up to their deeper psychological power. And if you truly want to speed up your personal transformation, join our private membership circle where we share daily, detailed content on psychological mastery that you won't find anywhere else. These are the kinds of insights helping thousands take back control of their lives in ways they once believed were impossible. Now we can explore Jung's hidden classification system together. What Carl Jung uncovered through years of clinical observation is that empathic ability is not a single trait. It shows itself through 5 different psychological structures, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Knowing your exact empath type matters because each one must activate its protective abilities through a different internal pathway. Many empaths struggle because they follow general advice that doesn't match their personal psychological wiring. It's like trying to open a high-security lock with the wrong key. No matter how perfectly you try, the system will never activate. The first powerful empath type Jung described was what he named the reflective empath. This type has an unusual mirroring ability that, once awakened, creates what Jung referred to as perfect narcissistic kryptonite. The reflective empath has an unconscious skill for taking in and then reflecting back the shadow traits that narcissists work hard to bury from themselves. Before activation, this talent makes reflective empaths very susceptible to gaslighting and emotional distortion because they naturally question their own perception whenever someone else describes a conflicting reality. But here is what makes this empath type incredibly powerful once it activates. When reflective empaths become aware of their mirroring gift, they develop the ability to reflect a narcissist's hidden material with such accuracy that it triggers what psychologists now describe as a narcissistic injury cascade. This is a mental collapse where the narcissist's carefully built false identity starts breaking apart the moment it comes into contact with the empath. The reflective empath does not do this on purpose. It simply happens when their natural psychological function works freely without being blocked by self-doubt or the urge to please others. Does this remind you of yourself? Do you often notice that you unintentionally provoke strong reactions in certain people, especially when you are only expressing what you honestly observe? Do you frequently absorb other people's emotions and then watch them become strangely defensive around you, as if you have noticed something they desperately want to hide? These are classic signs that you may be a reflective empath who has not yet activated your full mirroring ability. Once this activation happens, you will see that manipulative people can no longer maintain their false fronts in your presence. Not because you attack them, but because your natural way of existing makes their false identity impossible to hold together. The second powerful empath type in Jung's framework is the intuitive empath. This type has an exceptional talent for recognizing patterns that operates mostly beneath conscious awareness. Before activation, intuitive empaths often experience this strength as sudden flashes or gut feelings about people or situations, quiet internal signals they usually ignore or push aside with logical explanations. This habit of disregarding their inner warnings leaves them open to manipulators who rely on convincing, logical-sounding statements to override their target's natural instincts. But when intuitive empaths activate their full potential, they develop what Jung described as psychological X-ray vision, the power to detect manipulative behavior instantly, sometimes before the manipulator has even put their plan into motion. This ability does not work through slow analytical thinking, but through a refined pattern recognition system that the body senses before the mind fully processes it. When activated, intuitive empaths can pick up on the mismatch between someone's words and their real intentions with such accuracy that successful manipulation becomes nearly impossible. Do you often get strong intuitive impressions about someone only to talk yourself out of them and later discover your first instinct was correct? Do you notice hidden motives or unspoken intentions but dismiss them as unfair assumptions? These are signs that you may be an intuitive empath who hasn't learned to trust and weave your intuitive function into your everyday decisions. When this integration finally happens, you'll find yourself moving through complex emotional and social situations with an almost surprising accuracy, able to sense the truth of people and circumstances without needing anyone to confirm what you felt. The third powerful empath type Jung identified is the boundary empath. This uncommon type carries a remarkable ability for energetic separation that, once awakened, creates what Jung described as unbreakable psychological sovereignty. Before activation, boundary empaths often experience their gift as overwhelming sensitivity to the emotional atmosphere around them, making them feel everything too strongly and sometimes confusing other people's emotions with their own. This exposes them to emotional manipulation and forms of energy draining that leave them exhausted. But when boundary empaths awaken their full potential, they develop the ability to mirror back the narcissist's rejected inner material with such sharp accuracy that it sets off what psychologists now describe as a narcissistic injury cascade. This is a psychological condition where the narcissist's carefully built false identity begins to crumble the moment it comes into contact with the empath. This isn't something the reflective empath does out of intention or with any desire to wound. It happens naturally when their built-in psychological mechanism functions without being blocked by self-doubt or by the urge to please others. Does any of this feel familiar to you? Do you often find yourself unintentionally triggering powerful emotional reactions in certain individuals, especially when you're simply being straightforward about what you notice? Do you regularly take in other people's emotions only to see them become strangely defensive around you, acting as though you've noticed something they desperately want to conceal? These are strong indicators that you may be a reflective empath who has not yet fully awakened your reflective ability. Once this capability becomes active, you'll begin to see that manipulative individuals can no longer keep up their false identities in your presence. It isn't because you confront them, it's because your very way of existing makes their constructed persona collapse. The second powerful empath type in Jung's system is the intuitive empath. This type holds an impressive ability for unconscious pattern detection that functions mostly beneath the level of ordinary awareness. Before activation, intuitive empaths often feel their gift as random internal nudges about people or circumstances, gut reactions, or sudden knowing, which they often ignore or argue against using logic. This habit of pushing aside their instinctive signals leaves them especially open to manipulators who use rational-sounding excuses to quiet other people's natural warnings. But when intuitive empaths awaken their full power, they develop what Jung called psychological X-ray vision, the skill to detect manipulative behavior immediately, sometimes even before the manipulator has fully begun their tactic. This ability does not rely on deliberate thinking, but on a refined pattern recognition system that registers in the body before rising to the conscious mind. When completely activated, intuitive empaths can sense the distance between someone's spoken words and their true intentions with such clear accuracy that successful manipulation becomes nearly impossible. Do you frequently have strong intuitive impressions about people that you convince yourself to ignore, only to realize later that your first sense was right? Do you pick up on hidden motives or unspoken plans, but dismiss these perceptions as being unfair or too harsh? These are clear signs that you might be an intuitive empath who hasn't yet learned to trust and integrate your intuitive strengths. When this integration finally happens, you'll discover that you can move through complicated social and emotional situations with almost uncanny precision, sensing the truth of people and events without needing anyone else to confirm your perception. The third powerful empath type Jung described is the boundary empath. This uncommon type has an exceptional ability for energetic separation that, once activated, forms what Jung referred to as unshakable psychological sovereignty. Before activation, boundary empaths often experience their sensitivity as overwhelming exposure to the emotional states of others, causing them to absorb feelings so deeply that they cannot tell which emotions are theirs and which belong to someone else. This makes them easy targets for emotional manipulation and energy draining. But when boundary empaths switch on their full potential, they gain the ability to maintain complete energetic clarity even in highly emotional or chaotic environments. Unlike other empaths who may need to leave upsetting situations to regain stability, activated boundary empaths can stay fully present while maintaining a strong sense of where they end and where others begin. This creates a natural shield against emotional manipulation tactics that depend on unclear boundaries, things like guilt tripping, emotional overload, and shifting responsibility onto them. Does this sound relatable? Do you often feel overwhelmed in emotional settings, picking up others' feelings until your own become hard to recognize? Do you struggle to keep your identity steady when strong or dominant personalities are around you? These are signs that you may be a boundary empath who hasn't yet awakened your differentiation ability. When this activation finally happens, you will experience a deep internal change. You will hold your emotional clarity and personal truth no matter what emotional storms are happening around you. The fourth powerful empath type is what Jung described as the transmutative empath. This extremely rare type carries an extraordinary power for psychological transformation, the ability to take in negative emotional energy and convert it into something completely different. Before activation, transmutative empaths often end up acting as emotional processing containers for everyone around them, absorbing other people's psychological toxicity and frequently becoming drained or physically unwell because of it. This makes them especially appealing to narcissistic individuals who unconsciously look for people who can hold and absorb their rejected emotional material. But when transmutative empaths activate their full strength, they develop what Jung called alchemical immunity, the ability to handle others' emotional projections without absorbing their poisonous effects. Instead of acting as passive containers for emotional debris, they become active transformers who take in energy, shift it internally, and release it in a changed form. This ability makes projection-based manipulation completely useless. because the projected material no longer attaches or causes harm. It is transformed simply by passing through the field of the activated transmutative empath. Do you often notice that people unload their emotional heaviness onto you, leaving you feeling drained or physically affected afterward? Do people seem to walk away from you feeling lighter while you're left carrying their emotional residue? These are strong signs that you might be a transmutative empath who has not yet awakened your alchemical capacity. When this ability finally activates, you'll find you can remain in difficult emotional spaces without being contaminated by them, transforming the emotional energy around you rather than absorbing it. The fifth and most powerful empath type in Jung's hidden system is the sovereign empath. This extremely rare type carries what Jung described as complete psychological independence, a state where outside approval, praise, or rejection has absolutely no impact on their sense of self or on their ability to perceive reality accurately. Before activation, sovereign empaths may appear highly sensitive to approval and may show strong people-pleasing tendencies, making them look like ideal targets for manipulators who use validation as a tool for control. But this apparent weakness is misleading. When sovereign empaths awaken their full potential, they enter what Jung described as the highest form of psychological freedom, a complete separation of their self-worth from any kind of outside approval. This creates the strongest form of immunity to narcissistic influence because nearly every manipulative tactic relies on taking advantage of a person's need for acceptance, appreciation, or recognition. When that need disappears, the manipulator suddenly realizes they have no leverage left at all. Does any of this feel true for you? Do you often catch yourself looking for reassurance or acceptance, even though a deeper part of you knows you shouldn't depend on it? Do you adjust yourself depending on who you're around, only to feel strangely unreal or disconnected afterward? These patterns suggest you may be a sovereign empath who has not yet activated your inner autonomy. Once this activation happens, you'll feel a deep sense of release, a freedom to stay aligned with who you truly are, no matter how others react or respond. One of the most intriguing aspects of Jung's system is his discovery that most empaths aren't just one type. Instead, they are usually a mixture of 2 or sometimes 3 types, with one acting as their primary function. This blend creates distinct psychological profiles with particular activation triggers and protective strengths. Understanding both your dominant and secondary types is essential if you want to unlock your full empathic strength. Now let's look at the specific psychological triggers that awaken each empath type's natural defenses. For the reflective empath, the activation switch is what Jung referred to as conscious mirroring. This is the intentional act of noticing the emotions, assumptions, and projections you're picking up from others and calmly reflecting them back without changing them or trying to process them on the other person's behalf. This isn't used as a weapon or a way to strike back. It's a practice rooted in psychological honesty, mirroring what is present without absorbing it or bending yourself around it. Once reflective empaths begin doing this consciously, their entire psychological system shifts. Instead of unintentionally taking in other people's projections, they become clear mirrors that reflect truth with accuracy. This often leads to a curious reaction. Manipulative individuals start feeling uneasy around reflective empaths, describing the experience as feeling exposed or strangely seen, even though nothing confrontational is being said or done. For intuitive empaths, the activation trigger is what Jung described as body-centered perception. This is the practice of noticing and trusting the sensations that accompany intuitive signals, instead of waiting for mental approval or logical justification. It means paying close attention to how intuitive information shows up in your body, maybe as pressure in the chest, a tightening in the stomach, a sudden shift of energy, or a wave of alertness, and treating those responses as legitimate information rather than dismissing them as overreactions. This method bypasses the conscious mind's habit of shutting down intuition with logic. It directly reconnects the intuitive empath to their pattern recognition ability. As this connection strengthens, intuitive hits become clearer, more definite, and easier to trust. Over time, each intuitive signal carries its own recognizable physical signature. When this happens, gaslighting and reality-bending tactics lose all power because the empath no longer needs external confirmation to trust what they perceive. For the boundary empath, the activation trigger is what Jung called energetic differentiation. This is the intentional practice of identifying the subtle differences between emotions that come from within and emotions that come from outside. The difference is often incredibly small and requires careful attention. But Jung noted that there's always a noticeable distinction in the way each category of emotion feels. Emotions that originate within the self feel integrated and familiar, while absorbed emotions feel slightly foreign or out of place compared to the boundary empath's usual emotional rhythm. Practicing this creates what Jung considered an energetic immune system, an automatic filter that organizes emotional input before it enters the empath's internal world. It doesn't involve blocking emotions, because blocking would reduce the empath's sensitivity, which is one of their greatest strengths. Instead, the system correctly labels the source of the emotional information, preventing the confusion that makes emotional manipulation possible. When fully active, boundary empaths can receive emotional information with full sensitivity while remaining completely clear about what belongs to them and what belongs to someone else. For the transmutative empath, the activation trigger is what Jung called conscious metabolization. This is the deliberate process of engaging with absorbed negative energy instead of fighting it or trying to escape from it. It involves acknowledging what has been absorbed, allowing it to exist in awareness without resisting it, and then intentionally shifting its energetic quality using focused attention. This isn't about forcing negative thoughts to become positive or using surface-level affirmations. It's about working directly with the energy itself. This practice activates the transmutative empath's natural alchemical function, turning it from an unconscious drain into a conscious source of strength. Jung noted that once activated, transmutative empaths often feel more energized after encounters that would have previously left them drained. This doesn't happen because they block absorption. It happens because they participate in the transformation process with awareness, allowing the energy to change form instead of weighing them down. For the sovereign empath, the activation trigger is what Jung called self-referencing. This is the consistent practice of checking every belief, perception, and decision against an inner standard instead of relying on others' approval or expectations. It involves asking questions like, does this feel true for me? Instead of, will this make others happy? Or, will they approve of this? It requires shifting from depending on external approval to building internal validation through steady self-respect and self-trust. Over time, this process activates the sovereign empath's natural independence, shifting their orientation from outwardly focused to inwardly anchored. Jung observed that this transformation usually unfolds gradually until one day a tipping point is reached. Then the need for external validation simply falls away, revealing a natural inner authority that was always there beneath the learned pattern of seeking approval. Once this activation is complete, manipulation tactics that depend on approval-seeking lose every bit of their power. What Jung discovered next is one of the most fascinating psychological effects of empath activation. Narcissists and other manipulative personalities seem to sense the activation on some deep, instinctive level and begin to steer away from the activated empath entirely. It's almost as if they can detect that their usual tricks will no longer work or may even backfire when used on this particular person. This avoidance isn't a conscious plan, but more of an automatic reaction to the lack of psychological openings they normally rely on. This creates an unusual paradox. The empath who no longer feels the need to protect themselves from manipulative people ends up being naturally protected through this unconscious avoidance. They don't have to point out narcissists, anticipate their behavior, or put effort into defending themselves because their very presence becomes a silent barrier that repels manipulation without effort. Jung described this as effortless boundary maintenance, boundaries that don't have to be verbally declared or constantly guarded because they're built into the empath's state of awareness. But what happens to empaths who still find themselves stuck in unavoidable relationships with narcissistic personalities, whether family, co-parents, long-term partners, or workplace connections where escape isn't simple? Jung observed that activation brings not just protection, but also a powerful shift in the relationship dynamic. The narcissist's typical manipulation attempts not only lose their effect, they often rebound, creating consequences for the manipulator instead of the empath. This doesn't happen because the empath is fighting back or trying to manipulate in return. It happens because the old psychological imbalance, the one created by the empath's unconscious participation, is no longer present to feed the cycle. This change can be uncomfortable for both sides because it represents a deep restructuring of a pattern that may have existed for many years. The narcissist often cycles through rising levels of manipulation attempts before realizing, consciously or unconsciously, that the old dynamic is no longer possible. At that stage, one of two outcomes usually appears. Either the narcissist retreats to search for someone easier to control, or the relationship slowly shifts into something more genuine because the narcissist is forced to interact without their normal manipulative tools. What makes Jung's empath classification system so remarkable is how it turns our view of empathic sensitivity upside down. Instead of seeing it as a weakness that needs managing, he saw it as a refined psychological skill that can be consciously awakened. Each of the 5 empath types represents not a burden, but a unique form of intelligence that, when activated, naturally protects against manipulation while sharpening the empath's ability to move through complex emotional environments with clarity and confidence. This shift in understanding is freeing for empaths, who were told all their lives that their sensitivity makes them easy victims, or that they must toughen themselves to survive. Jung's work suggests the opposite. The path to empowered empathy doesn't come from becoming less sensitive, but from becoming more aware and more intentional with the type of sensitivity you already possess. It's about activation instead of defense, expression instead of suppression. I've seen this transformation in thousands of empaths who used Jung's system to understand and activate their specific type. One reflective empath explained the change beautifully. It felt like I spent years trying to dim my mirror because I believed the issue was that I reflected too much. Now I see the answer was to make my reflection more conscious and accurate, not less strong. When I stopped absorbing everything and began reflecting cleanly instead, everything shifted. Danish, an intuitive empath, shared a similar shift. I used to think my intuitive flashes were just worry or overthinking. I kept talking myself out of what I already knew. Learning to feel these intuitive signals in my body instead of trying to confirm them with logic changed everything. Now I can easily tell the difference between real anxiety and genuine intuitive information, and my accuracy is almost perfect. A boundary empath described their activation like this. The major shift happened when I realized I didn't need to push emotions away to have boundaries. I only needed to know which emotions were mine and which belonged to someone else. Once I could feel that difference, boundaries became simple instead of draining. I can be fully present with someone in deep emotional pain without picking up their pain as my own. Pornum, a transmutative empath, shared another insight. I spent years trying not to absorb negative energy, not understanding that absorbing and transforming was actually my ability. When I stopped fighting the absorption and started taking part in the transformation itself, everything changed. Now I can sit with the heaviest emotional energy and watch it shift without being drained. And a sovereign empath described their activation with clear simplicity. One day I realized I was still making choices based on what would make others happy, even though I always talked about boundaries. When I began checking each decision against my own inner direction instead of other people's expected reactions, I felt this huge sense of freedom. It wasn't about being selfish, it was about being genuine. And strangely, my relationships improved instead of falling apart. These stories show the same pattern Jung observed again and again. When empaths activate according to their natural type, they receive not only protection from manipulation, but also a deep strengthening of their natural abilities. The sensitivity that once felt like a weakness becomes their greatest advantage, helping them read people and situations with extraordinary accuracy and effectiveness. This leads to an important question. What if you don't feel like you fit neatly into just one empath type? Jung noted that most empaths are actually blends of 2 or sometimes 3 types, with one acting as the main function. This creates unique activation needs and unique forms of protection that can't be reached through general empath advice. Understanding your exact combination is essential for waking up your full empathic potential. For example, an empath whose main type is reflective but whose secondary type is intuitive would need to start with conscious mirroring practices while also strengthening body-based perception as a supporting skill. An empath whose main type is intuitive but secondary type is boundary would start by trusting their intuitive insights while building clear energetic separation to support those insights. Jung found that some combinations are especially powerful once activated. The reflective sovereign blend creates what he called the ultimate narcissistic barrier, an empath who can reflect the narcissist's hidden material with perfect accuracy while staying completely unaffected by the narcissist's emotional responses to that reflection. The intuitive transmutative pairing creates what Jung described as a form of preemptive alchemical protection, the ability to sense and shift negative energy before it even has the chance to fully take shape. Understanding your exact empath combination allows you to create a focused activation method instead of relying on broad empath advice that may actually weaken or confuse your unique type. This focused approach speeds up the activation process and provides deeper, more reliable protection than general techniques can ever offer. As we move toward closing, I want to address a concern many people share. Does activation turn you into someone distant, cold, or emotionally removed? Jung's research shows the complete opposite. When empaths activate according to their specific type, they don't lose their sensitivity. They usually experience a strengthening of it. They become more capable of real connection, more accurate in their empathic understanding, and far better at offering true support without exhausting themselves. This shift happens because activation clears away the distortions created by unconscious emotional absorption. Instead of taking in feelings in a confused or overwhelming way, activated empaths receive emotional information with clear understanding of what it is and where it comes from. Instead of reacting from triggered emotional states, they respond from grounded awareness. Instead of acting from tangled boundaries, they engage from a place of inner clarity. The outcome is not less empathy, but stronger, cleaner, more effective empathy. It becomes the difference between empathy that drains you and empathic intelligence that nourishes you. The difference between emotional contagion and conscious emotional perception. The difference between empathy as weakness and empathy as strength. I invite you to think about which of Jung's 5 empath types matches your own inner experience most closely. Which activation cues feel most connected to your current emotional growth? Which protective abilities would most transform the difficult dynamics in your life right now? This kind of reflection already begins the activation process because it brings awareness to parts of your empathic nature that may have been working quietly in the background of your mind for years. Remember that activation isn't about turning into a different person. It's about becoming more fully aligned with who you already are. It's not about shrinking your sensitivity, but directing it with more accuracy and confidence. It's not about shutting down connection, but engaging with others from a place of choice and psychological steadiness. The 5 deep empath types Jung identified represent different forms of a shared human capacity for powerful perception and meaningful connection. When you understand and activate your specific type, you convert what once felt like a weakness into one of your strongest qualities. Not only for protecting yourself, but for expressing the full depth of who you are meant to be as an empath. If this message connects with you, I invite you to subscribe to our channel right now and join the thousands of empaths who are experiencing this activation journey together. Share your thoughts in the comments because your story may be exactly what another empath needs today. And if you feel ready to move more quickly into your activation, consider joining our membership circle where we explore these teachings more deeply every single day. Until next time, remember that your empathic nature is not a burden you must carry, but a refined form of psychological intelligence waiting to be fully awakened. When it is, you become truly unreachable to anyone who would try to manipulate or misuse your gifts.